3 spine-chilling true summer vacation horrors. Unexplained terror revealed in Sinister encounters. The Johnsons thought they were escaping to paradise, but what awaited them was something far more sinister. As the family packed their SUV with excitement bubbling over, little did they know this summer camping trip would plunge them into a nightmare that would haunt their dreams forever. Just when the sun dipped below the horizon, they unearthed horrors waiting in the shadows, ready to wrap their bony fingers around their joy. Rolling down the winding back roads, laughter echoed inside the car. "Can't wait for that barbecue!" "Dad," Dave exclaimed, his tone infectious as the kids, Mia and Lucas, echoed his excitement. 6 hours seemed like an eternity, but their destination loomed ahead, a glimmer of tranquility promising warmth under starlit skies. Until, out of nowhere, they spotted a man, his scruffy face weathered, holding a sign that read simply, "Leave now." Panic prickled in Jessica's chest, but the moment passed as they left him behind. Just a local drifter, she thought, shaking off the unsettling chill. When they finally reached the campsite, a sun-dappled clearing encased by towering trees greeted them, the tranquil embrace beckoning like an old friend. As night fell, the blissful atmosphere shifted. A shiver crept up Jessica's spine as she glanced towards the forest, where shadows flickered just outside their campfire-esque glow. Laughter turned nervous. She caught Mia's wide eyes darting between the trees, the serene whisper of the woods morphing into a creeping dread. They quickly set up their tent, clutching onto that summer vibe, but unease settled like fog over their hearts. Around the crackling fire, as they roasted hot dogs under a blanket of stars, the first inkling of horror arrived. Lucas reached for his backpack and found a note tucked inside, scrawled in frantic letters, "Leave before it's too late." Laughter turned to whispers of disbelief. "A prank?" Dave suggested, dismissing it as teenage tomfoolery. But a new note appeared, this one slipping unexpectedly from Mia's sleeping bag. "The darkness is watching." Jessica's stomach tightened. The air around them grew heavy and charged. The warmth of the fire seemed trivial against the growing chill swinging from the forest. "Mom, can we go home?" Mia whispered, her voice quaking. Jessica's heart sank, but Dave, too determined to spoil their trip, insisted, "It's just our imagination. Relax." Moments later, a terrifying noise shattered their fragile calm. A rusty screech pulled through the trees, tipping over their picnic table, shadows gliding menacingly towards their flickering light. Grabbing the flashlight, Dave aimed it at the darkened woods where nothing and everything lurked. A shadow flickered just out of reach, and sweat dripped down Jessica's brow. Frantic and desperate, the family decided to explain it all to the local sheriff the following day, seeking solace and reassurance. Instead, they were met with chuckles and dismissive waves. The officer's mocking words twisted their fear into an uncomfortable knot. "Toughen up, city folk." As night deepened, whispers slithered through the trees, a language they couldn't comprehend, and the darkness around them pulsed with life, every rustle sending painful jolts of terror up their spines. Just then, they stumbled upon unsettling stories buried deep in the forest, folklore tales of something hidden, long ago forgotten, that stirred and stretched, now awakened by their unknowing intrusion. A distant shriek cut through the crisp air, and a primal fear gripped them. The Johnsons were entangled in a dance with something ancient and dark, a secret that chased them relentlessly, and their summer getaway had morphed into the stuff of nightmares. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With every chill breeze and silence that clawed at their backs, the Johnsons began uncovering connections between the family and the very land they walked upon. Memories from the past twisted like vines around their ankles, dragging them deeper into the woods. The darkness hungered, waiting to consume them, and as moments of fleeting hope vanished like night, the forest closed in, whispering promises of terrors yet unseen. What horrors would they unearth before it was too late? The wind wailed through the trees, sounding like lost souls crying out for help. Jessica felt the air thicken, heavy with dread. Each gust whispered warnings, pricking her skin with cold fingers. She looked at her family, fear etched on their faces, each lost in their own spiraling thoughts. "Did you hear that?" Lucas's voice trembled as he clutched his dad's arm. Eyes wide, he glanced nervously at the shifting shadows beyond the tent. The rustling seemed to come closer, circling them like a predator sizing up its prey. "Maybe it's just an animal." Dave started, but even he did not sound convincing. Then, a crash erupted deeper in the woods, louder and more violent than before, cutting through the night like glass shattering against stone. The family froze, their hearts thundering in unison. The sound had a weight like the forest itself was protesting their presence. Let us go check it out," Dave suggested, his voice lowering as if afraid he might awaken whatever roamed the darkness. "No!" Mia shouted, but her protest was drowned in the storm swirling around them. "We should just stay here." But curiosity and fear combined had Dave rising, flashlight in hand. "I'll go. You guys stay put." Jessica's heart sank. She watched as he edged into the shadowy embrace of the trees, the beam of his flashlight flickering like a weak heartbeat. "Dad, please!" Lucas shouted, but he was already disappearing into the night. Silence settled heavily around Jessica and the kids, the flames of their campfire dancing weakly against the oppressive darkness. Minutes stretched painfully as they waited, each second filled with the increasing noise of the forest, whispers growing louder, murmurs melding into a cacophony of chilling tones that made the hairs on Jessica's arms stand on end. Sudden shouting pierced through the veil of night. Jessica and the kids jumped, adrenaline rushing through their veins. "Dave!" she called, panic threading her voice. And then came the scream. It was raw and filled with an anguish that could only belong to a person in unimaginable terror. Lucas whimpered beside her, gripping her hand as if it could shield him from the nightmare. "Stay here," she commanded, masking her own fear as she dashed towards the trees. The stillness that enveloped her was suffocating. Each step felt like wading through molasses. The beam of the flashlight was a thin thread of hope stretching before her. "Dave! Where are you?" she shouted, her voice breaking. The shadows seemed to taunt her, swirling into figures that danced at the edges of her vision. A flash of motion caught her eye, a dark silhouette darting away. Fear clutched at her heart. When she finally reached the source of the screams, she stumbled into a clearing. Broken branches lay strewn about like gnarled fingers reaching for the sky. The flashlight illuminated the scene, but there was no sign of Dave, only blood-soaked earth and an odd, unsettling pattern carved into the ground like a warning. She whipped around, scanning the dark. Not a sound. Not a breath. A chill swept through her, deeper than the cold air. The darkness around her began to pulse again, a living entity hungry for her fear. "Mia! Lucas!" she called, dread twisting in her gut as the air turned thick and suffocating. There was only silence, the kind of silence that echoed, heavy with unspoken dread. Jessica rushed back, but the trail seemed to twist and turn, leading her deeper into the forest. The path blurred, shadows gripped at her, and the whispers they grew louder, final and demanding. Leave now. With wild speed she ran, heart pounding against her ribs, fleeing the whispers clawing at her mind, until she burst into the campsite only to find it empty. In sheer terror, she screamed their names, but the forest swallowed her cries. Just beyond the firelight, the shadows moved, and against the trees, a pair of glowing eyes emerged. They waited, hungry and patient. Jessica felt the last threads of hope slip away. She took a shaky breath. What had she unleashed? The forest's heart thudded, a countdown to something she couldn't yet understand. What horrifying truth would she discover next? Jessica's breath came in fast, shallow gasps as she stood frozen at the edge of the clearing, the emptiness of the campsite echoing a dreadful finality. Panic clawed at her throat. How could Mia and Lucas disappear without a trace? The flickering shadows danced ominously around her, an unsettling reminder of the terror lurking just beyond the firelight. "Where are they?" she shouted into the dark. Her voice cracked, the silence swallowing her cries whole. She felt dizzy, her heart racing like a wild animal trapped in a cage. The glowing eyes in the distance blinked slowly, studying her. Gathering her fading courage, Jessica stepped closer to the fire, hoping the light would protect her from the encroaching darkness. The chill in the air held a weight that pressed down on her chest. She looked around again, squinting, trying to pierce the gloom. "Guys. Just say something." But the only response was the rustling of leaves, the wind carrying with it the whispers she'd heard before. Leave now. The voices seemed almost familiar, brushing against her mind like a caress, yet carrying a menacing edge that made her skin crawl. Then, at the edge of her vision, movement. A shadow shuddered, darting past the trees. Was it Mia? Lucas? Jessica felt the desperation tighten like a vice in her chest. "I'm coming!" she yelled, following the fleeting shape. She sprinted into the dark, her pulse echoing in her ears, her desperate calls fading into the abyss. With every step, the forest thickened, grief-leaden branches clawing at her arms, scraping her as if they were warning her to turn back. She didn't stop. Had she not already lost everything? "Please! You can't leave me alone!" she begged, tears streaming down her cheeks, her voice trembling. The oppressive silence mocked her, filling the spaces where laughter and safety should be. The shadows closed in. A low growl reverberated through the trees, something ancient and primal. Fear surged through her veins, and she faltered, looking back. Was it a trick of the dark? But a shape loomed in her peripheral vision. Heart racing, she turned and gasped. The glowing eyes were closer now, blinking, unblinking, reflecting the faint light of her dwindling flashlight. They were deeper in the blackness, more than one pair, swirling in the shadows, hungry and predatory. "Stop it! Show yourself!" she yelled, defiance mingling with fear. No answer. Only the pulsating darkness that beckoned her deeper, enveloping her in its ominous embrace. Then it happened, an instinctive pull, a chilling cold wrapping around her ankles. Jessica stumbled, glancing down to see roots snaking up from the ground, like fingers reaching to pull her under. She struggled, kicking frantically, but with every movement, the forest seemed to weave tighter around her. "Let go of me!" she screamed, fighting against the earth that wanted to consume her. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the trees, like thunder, and the world around her tilted. Branches snapped, and a shadow surged through the trees, barreling towards her. In blind panic, she wrenched free and sprinted away, heart hammering, the whispers now a siren's call urging her on. "Leave, it's too late, you're there's." Breaking through the trees, she burst into another clearing. The moonlight bathed everything in a pale glow. It felt like a sanctuary until she caught sight of what lay ahead. The bodies. Mia and Lucas, unconscious, sprawled on the ground, surrounded by the very symbols carved into the dirt. Blood pooled beneath them, and the shadowed figures loomed, waiting. Jessica felt her stomach drop, bow rising to her throat. "No!" she screamed, charging forward, but a force halted her. "Join us," the shadows whispered, creeping closer, their eyes glimmering in the night. Jessica stumbled back as they closed in, the realization crashing on her like a wave. Was this how it ended? Would she be a part of the forest's dark legacy? The oppressive night closed in, the whispers now a deafening roar. How could she fight? A chilling laughter echoed, half a man's, half a creature's crackling through the air as Jessica stood at the brink, teetering on the edge of despair. What awaited her in the dark? Would she follow her family into the darkness, or summon the strength to escape? Sacrifice or survival? The forest was waiting. Jessica's heart thundered as the shadows drew near. She could feel the weight of their eyes, a suffocating pressure that made her chest tight. The laughter echoed, bouncing off the trees, twisting her insides. "Mia! Lucas!" she screamed, desperation clawing at her throat. The shadows shifted, writhing like smoke, and she caught glimpses of their forms, indistinct yet disturbing. Was it just her imagination conjuring nightmares? Or were they real? She had to make a choice. Fight or succumb. Join us, they caressed the words like silk, yet it felt like a noose closing around her neck. The ground felt alive, roots undulating, eager to claim her as their own. Wrenching her mind from the allure, she turned and ran. She stumbled backward, panting against the sheer terror that coursed through her veins. The moonlight flickered like a heartbeat, illuminating her path in flashes. She dashed toward the trees, intent on escaping the apparition, the screaming voices urging her on. Upon reaching the edge of the clearing, she paused to catch her breath. Her hands pressed against the rough bark of a nearby tree as she fought against rising panic. If she could just think. Think, Jessica. She whispered to herself, clutching her head. That S when a faint rustle caught her attention. Peeking back into the darkness, she saw a movement, a blur darting through the shadows. Mia? Lucas? She hissed, hope wresting control over her fear. Is that you? There was no reply, only the relentless whispers. Stay, don't leave, they echoed in her mind, digging deep, mixing with the terror intertwining in her belly. Cautiously, she stepped back toward the center of the clearing, not wanting to give in to the panic. Her flashlight flickered once more, casting eerie glints on the symbols scrawled in the dirt around her friends. Had they drawn those? Or had the forest? A shiver danced up her spine at the thought. The growl returned, low and menacing, emanating from somewhere deeper within the trees. She could almost feel it vibrating through her bones. Please! I'm not afraid of you, Jessica shouted, though her voice quavered. She could feel it, primal instinct telling her to run, yet something held her frozen. Join us, they beckoned, and she resisted the dizzying pull. Her heart raced faster, the shadows twisting around her legs like cold steel. How long before they would pull her in, consumed and lost in their dark legacy? With a surge of adrenaline, she turned to her left and plunged into the shadows, dodging the reaching limbs with frantic determination. She sprinted deeper into the forest, the darkness pressing around her. Each step felt like a battle against the suffocating despair. Then she heard it, a scream. It reverberated through the trees, sharp and agonizing. Jessica's breath hitched. Was it Mia? Lucas? Or was it something else altogether? She pushed harder, her feet scrambling over roots that twisted in the moonlight like writhing snakes. Stumbling into another clearing, she reached for the flashlight. It flickered ominously, casting frantic beams in every direction. What was this place? The air thickened and the shadows coiled tighter. She glimpsed a figure in the corner of the light, a whisper of movement in the darkness. Help! Help me! It was Lucas! Lucas? She shouted, her heart surging with hope. But before she could reach for him, he vanished into the shadows, pulled away by an unseen force. No! Please! Panic coursed through her veins. She had to pursue him. The forest around her groaned with pain as she dashed forward, fear now her only compass. She could feel it. The forest didn't want her to go. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, drowning out her thoughts. Time blurred, and space twisted. Leave, run, they sang, but she couldn't. Not now. And then she fell, tripped over a root, her body crashing to the ground. As she lay there, breathless and scared, she felt the cold fingers of the earth wrap around her ankles again. They were here. A familiar voice drifted out from the darkness, calling her name. Jessica, heart pounding, she looked up. Through the tangled branches. Mia? The silhouette stepped forward, mingled with the shadows. But something felt off, twisted. Join us, Jessica's heart dropped. Was this truly her friend? Or another cruel trick of the forest? The shadows wove tighter, almost eager to take her too. Desperation clawed at her chest again. What do you want from me? She screamed, shaking off the dark, inching back, sweat trickling down her forehead. The laughter roared again, echoing off the trees, a cacophony that left no space for reason. And in that moment, amidst the chaos and dread, she suddenly understood the truth: the forest wasn't just trapping them. It was hungry. And it would never let them go. Would she find a way to break free, or would she succumb to the darkness, forever lost among the shadows? Jessica's breath came in sharp gasps as the shadows flickered closer, each whisper gnawing at her resolve. The darkness swirled around her legs, pulling taut like a predator's grip. She tried to rise, but the earth seemed to crawl over her, pinning her down. "Get off!" she cried, yanking her legs but only finding more resistance. Panic swallowed her whole, her mind racing. Was this how it would end? She could feel her heartbeat, a frantic drum echoing in the silence, as the world around her twisted and warped. "Join us," the voices were all around, tightening like a noose. A cold sweat drenched her forehead, and she fought to focus, to break free from the incessant chant echoing in her skull. "I want tea!" With one last heave, she bolted upright, eyes darting to the trees that loomed like sentinels. The shadows shifted, and she stumbled backward, almost losing her footing again. "Lucas! Mia!" she screamed, her voice cracking. If she could just reach the other clearing, the one with the symbols, maybe it held the answers, or perhaps a way out. She darted forward, fear clawing at her heels, each step a death-defying leap into the unknown. The laughter rose, a chilling chorus that seemed to mock her every move. She felt that the forest was alive, its roots writhing beneath her feet, hungry for her despair. As she ran, branches clawed at her skin, tugging her back, testing her resolve. "Join us," they sang, their voices a silken promise dripping with malice. For a moment she paused, the sounds wrapping around her like a seductive fog. "No! I want tea!" The will to survive surged within her, igniting a fierce determination. She pushed through the pain, breaking free of the unyielding grasp of fear. Adrenaline surged, and she found another burst of speed. With every stride, she felt the shadows trailing behind, their ethereal forms stretching and pulling, just out of reach. Then, just as Jessica thought she'd left the darkness behind, a rustling broke the silence ahead. She skidded to a halt, breath hitching in her chest. "Mia?" A figure emerged from the trees, illuminated briefly by her erratic flashlight. But it wasn't he, her friend. The creature that stepped into the beam was elongated, thin, distorted eyes wide with terror and glittering like dark glass. Before she could scream, it lurched toward her with an unnatural speed, its mouth a gaping maw, spiraling open as if to swallow her whole. "No, no, no!" she shrieked, her instincts kicking in. She turned, running again. Behind her, the creature's footsteps thudded, echoing off the trees, each sound a countdown to her demise. She sprinted past the clearing where she had first seen Lucas, without stopping to whirl around and check. She couldn't risk it, she couldn't lose her focus. The laughter grew louder, mocking her, urging her to despair. "Help! Jessica!" A voice emerged from the chaos, a desperate cry. It was Lucas, and for a fleeting instant it filled her with courage. She raced toward the sound, fear and determination intertwining like twin serpents. Yet, the shadows coiled tighter, tendrils reaching for her, a tempest of darkness. As she pushed onward, the very ground beneath her felt alive, throbbing with malice. It wanted her, needed her. "Where are you?" she cried, panic surging. But the shadows murmured again, "You're one of us." Suddenly, she stumbled into a large tree, its gnarled roots erupting around her like a twisted throne. If she could climb, maybe just as she grabbed a branch, the shadows lunged, pulling her back, dragging her down. "Lucas! Mia! Help me!" she screamed, flailing as the grasp of darkness closed around her shoulders. And then there was a silence, a deafening void that swallowed her cries. She fought against the embrace of the shadows, the desperation blooming within her. Could she wrest control from the forest? Or would she be claimed, silenced? Like so many others before her, the forest held its breath, waiting hungry for the inevitable. What darkness awaited her at the end of this torment, if any? And would she find her friends, or would this be the moment that her soul was forever entwined in the roots of this cursed land? The darkness enveloped Jessica like a shroud, pulling her deeper into its suffocating embrace. She felt herself slipping away, her senses dulling as the whispers became hypnotic. "You're one of us," the voice sneered again, teasing and tormenting. Even in her desperation, a part of her felt the unrelenting lure. What could it mean to be free of this struggle, to finally belong? "No!" she shouted, shaking her head vigorously, but they were not just voices. They took root in her mind, burrowing in like parasites. She clawed at the ground, her fingers scraping against the rough bark, her heart racing as she fought against the pooling despair. In moments like this, what mattered, survival or surrender? With a violent lurch, Jessica jerked back, focusing on the sound of Lucas's distant cries, which filled her with fervor. She had to move. But the shadows tightened their coil, thin, shadowy limbs wrapping around her limbs like a spider's web. Each twist felt heavier than the last, dragging her down, but with every ounce of strength, she kicked free. "Keep calling. I'm coming," she pleaded, forcing herself to fight against the darkness, against her own mind. She lunged to her feet, driven by a fierce urgency to find her friends. The roots grasped at her ankles, pulling back, threatening to devour her whole if she faltered. The screeches of the creature echoed off the trees. Overhead, the branches seemed to twist into claws, reaching down as if they craved her flesh. Adrenaline coursed through her body. The dim glow of her flashlight flickered ominously, illuminating a path through the dense foliage. She veered left, muscles screaming in protest. "Jessica!" The voice was closer now, a frantic whisper that cut through the cacophony. She stumbled forward, glancing back, the shadows momentarily fading as she spotted a glimmer of movement. "Lucas!" she shouted, her voice raw, and then she saw him. He stood in the clearing, bathed in a sickly green light that emanated from the ground beneath him. But what was happening? Was he also? No! Her instincts screamed. It was a trap. The roots churned again, alive and breathing, reaching for Lucas too. "Help!" he cried, arms stretching toward her, eyes wide with terror, filled with confusion. Fear surged within her, she had to save him. "Stay back, Lucas! Don't move!" Though she desperately fought against the shadows encroaching on her, they were relentless, pulling her closer with every heartbeat. "Join us," they murmured, seducing her, that whisper slipping through the cracks in her resolve. They were so close, the shadows brushed against her skin, chilling, teasing like touches from something she had forgotten yet longed for. "Jessica! Please!" Lucas's voice broke her trance. Grabbing a nearby branch, she used every ounce of her strength, swinging it wildly through the darkness, striking at the writhing limbs that reached for Lucas. A surge of pain shot up her arm as the shadows bit back, but she pushed through, adrenaline fueled by the urgency of his cries. The creature lurched closer, its jagged mouth gaping wider, as if it might break apart the fabric of reality. "No! Stay away from him!" A violent spasm of light erupted from the ground, the symbols illuminating for a brief moment. The shadows flinched back, recoiling from the glow, releasing their tight grip on Jessica. "Go!" she screamed at Lucas, thrusting the branch toward him, urging his escape. But a sudden blast of darkness surged forward again, swallowing her voice like a monstrous tide. She stumbled, lost in the chaos, her flashlight flickering low. The laughter crescendoed, sharp and jagged. The last thing she saw was Lucas diving toward the symbols, wild eyes filled with horror, his voice swallowed by the darkness just as it dragged her back into the void. She reached for him, her hands slipping into infinite black from somewhere deep within the shadows. She heard them again. "You're meant to join us, Jessica. Come home." And then everything went dark. How could she escape from this? From the shadows that promised both comfort and chaos? Would her fight for Lucas be her last act, or was there still something lurking in the heart of the woods that could aid her desperate struggle? Jessica swam through a sea of darkness, the whispers stretching out into an unnerving silence, wrapping around her like a thick fog. The overwhelming dread felt all-consuming. She tried to blink, tried to think, but only felt the weight of despair drag on her chest. Then there came a flicker and echo of the sickly glows she had seen before. Her heart pounded as it coursed back to her, igniting a spark of hope and confusion. She found herself standing in a clearing, the air thick and oppressive. The ground pulsed beneath her feet, alive, beating like a heart. Symbols, etched deep into the earth, glimmered faintly, their meaning foreign yet alluring. "Lucas?" she whispered into the enveloping darkness, barely managing to make a sound. A tremor ran through the ground in response. She felt it surge beneath, like a colossal beast awakening. Her breath hitched. She wasn't alone. Shadows played at the edge of her vision, writhing and slithering, a grotesque choreography of malice driven by a cruel intent. From behind her, the mocking laughter returned, ricocheting eerily off the trees. "Leave her alone!" a familiar voice screamed. It was Lucas. His voice still echoed in the void, but the distance made it chillingly absurd. She was so close, yet how could she reach him now? Chaos danced in her mind, knotting her gut with dread. As if sensing her turmoil, the shadows shifted, swirling with renewed vigor. They reached out, clawing at her ankles, dragging her firmly into their dark fold. Panic surged, electric and coursing through her body. She clenched her fists, willing her muscles to fight, to shake off their grip even as they passed into her skin, filling her with an icy grip of terror. "Jessica! I need you!" She shot upright, a gasp escaping her lips as she narrowly broke free of the endless grasping tendrils. Momentarily unbound, she stumbled sideways, catching sight of a faint flickering light beyond the shadow's grasp, a warm beacon amid an ocean of despair. With every jittery step toward the glow, she sensed the creature, the massive, lurking presence that hungered just out of sight, its breath like a gust of winter against her skin. She could feel its hunger, a pulse that resonated with her own racing heart. "Stay back! Don't come near me!" Jessica cried out, voice cracking with the weight of desperation. Even as her throat burned, she felt the ancient pull of the shadows pulling her back toward their depths. The whispers resumed, relentless and persuasive, intertwining with thoughts she couldn't identify. "You belong no! I can't!" she cried, clenching her fists and fighting against the throbbing urgency that demanded she submit. Clarity began to slice through the fog. Jessica turned toward the glowing symbols, the key to her survival. Could they shield her from the darkness that threatened to claim her life? Gathering everything she had left, she charged straight at the symbols, her feet pounding against the earth. The whispers crescendoed, rising in angry defiance. The shadows surged, wrapping tightly around her. Just when she thought the darkness would swallow her whole, she dove into the illuminated space, feeling a rush of heat engulf her. For a glorious moment, she felt free. The clutches of despair burned away in the light. But in that brilliance, she sensed movement behind her, a vast, terrible form closing in fast. "Lucas!" The name ripped from her lips, desperation painted with a fresh stroke of panic. His figure flickered at the edge of her vision, too close, yet so painfully far. The shadows recoiled slightly but then lashed out, angry that she had escaped their grasp. They lunged, eager to reclaim their prey. Jessica felt the symbol's pulse, fighting with her panic and despair. Would this light hold? Could it protect her and Lucas from the lurking terror? The ground under her trembled again, fissures cracking open where the darkness snaked, and a shadowy hand reached for her, stretching and reaching for her soul. She saw Lucas's face, horrified, desperate, and knew she had to act. But as she stood there, heart racing, what if they weren't meant to be saved? What if the darkness was the only escape? The glow intensified, the creature's rage amplifying in waves, crashing against the tether of light that held her tethered. She was teetering on the edge of oblivion, where shadows melded with whispers and comfort turned into horror. Then, she felt a tug at her heart, a connection gnawing at her perception of reality. The question echoed inside her mind, was she truly fighting to save Lucas or to save herself? And as she wavered, the darkness lingered, a silent predator expanding, and Jessica sensed it watching, waiting for her next move. Jessica's heart raced as she stood in that blistering glow, a fleeting warmth in contrast to the chilling terror engulfing her. The shadows writhed. They pulsed and coiled around her, their sinister essence lingering just beyond the luminous threshold. Every instinct screamed for her to flee, but in that moment, her resolve hardened. "Lucas!" she called out again, voice raw with both fear and determination. Each shout felt more desperate than the last, echoing through the chilling silence of the forest. The very trees seemed to murmur her name, mocking her, their gnarled branches twisting like skeletal fingers. But Lucas was still out there somewhere, caught in the shrouded edges of her reality. She could feel him. Clarity surged within her like adrenaline. This was not just about escaping, it was about standing firm, about fighting for both their lives. The glowing symbols pulsed more brightly, responding to her urgency. Each beat resonated like a drum, throbbing with the promise of protection. If she could unlock their power, maybe they could shield her and Lucas from the encroaching darkness. She took a step forward, trembling but unyielding. The shadows recoiled slightly but resumed their onslaught, more aggressive now, as if recognizing her defiance. They clawed at her again, shredding at her resolve, whispering dark doubts that invaded her mind. "You can't save him, it's too late, no!" She gritted her teeth, pushing the darkness out of her mind. Pleasure and pain mixed violently, yet she pressed further into the light. "Lucas needs me." The energy pulsing from the symbols shot through her veins, a jolt of hope fighting against the oppressive gloom. She reached out, fingertips brushing the glowing lines etched into the ground. It felt ancient, primal, and alive. In that instant, a surge of clarity arced through her, illuminating her purpose. What if the shadows were not merely a force of destruction but also of revelation? Perhaps they were testing her, challenging her will to embrace the darkness within and around her. Suddenly, a scream shattered the air, a cry that sent spikes of panic tearing through her. It wasn't just a sound. It was an echo of suffering, raising the hair on the back of her neck. It was Lucas. "Jessica." His voice sliced through the fog. It was laced with terror, reverberating like the tolling of a death knell. "Hang on!" she bellowed, eyes wide with desperation. The glow around her intensified as the symbols began to resonate with her pleas. The very ground roared in a rush of primal energy, pushing back against the grasping darkness, but doubt clung to the edges of her mind. Could she really confront what lay ahead? The dark masses writhed closer, distorted faces twisting and contorting, hungry for her fear. A shadowy figure emerged, towering over her with malicious intent. She shrank back instinctively, but the pull of the light still urged her forward. "Lucas!" she screamed, forcing her legs to move, racing towards that haunting cry, willing herself to forge ahead, despite the dread that clawed at her heart. She felt the shadows respond with venomous fury, quickening their pace, an unseen tide, ready to drag her down into the abyss. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to turn back, to find safety instead of confronting the heart of darkness. But could she abandon Lucas? The thought propelled her against the paralyzing fear. She lunged ahead. "I'm coming!" The darkness surged, amalgamating into a nightmarish visage, its eyes glinting like obsidian. Jessica's pulse quickened, her breath hitching as she dared to face the impossibility. The symbols blazed hot under her hands. She focused every thought on Lucas, on breaking through the shadows that sought to consume them both. But just as she felt the light tethering her, an icy wave of despair surged through her, jolting her thoughts. It was a truth buried in the whispers that echoed in her ears, a revelation that splintered her courage. Despair is an option, and at that precise moment, the ground beneath her cracked wide open, dark tendrils erupting from the depths, racing towards her with deadly intent. "Lucas!" Jessica screamed, bracing herself for the inevitable onslaught. Would she fall into darkness or rise in the light? But then a deeper resonance filled her, stronger than ever before. The choice condensed to one singular question. What if embracing the shadows held the key to saving them both? As the shadows encroached, she felt the answer just beyond her grasp, waiting to be seized in the most terrifying moment yet. Jessica felt the earth tremble beneath her as the crevice widened, swallowing the remains of hope left in her heart. The tendrils lunged forward, slick and serpentine, cold as death. They coiled around her ankles, pulling her toward the abyss. She could almost feel the cold breath of the void against her skin, a whisper of doom that beckoned her to give in. "Lucas!" she called again, each scream tearing at her throat. The shadows throbbed with anticipation, circling her like vultures over a prey. The voices contorted, rising like a chorus of despair. "You're too late. It's already begun." But she wouldn't listen. Not now, not when the stakes were this high. Should she yield? Could this be the moment where despair could blossom into a harbored strength? In defiance of the darkness, she pressed her palms against the blazing symbols, grounding herself to the warmth. With each pulse of energy surging through her, she felt more connected to the symbols, more connected to Lucas. Through the din of relentless whispers, she summoned every ounce of spirit she had left. "I will not let you take him!" The shadows stilled, hesitating at her declaration. For a heartbeat, it felt as if the darkness paused, waiting for her next move. Then, the malformed faces in the gloom twisted in rage, a multitude of wailing screams erupting like a tide crashing against the shore. They lunged towards her, their wild forms more monstrous than ever, each tendril dripping with malicious intent. Just then, a flicker caught her eye, a flicker of something more than light. Within the chaos of the shadows, Jessica saw a glimpse of Lucas, silhouetted against the void, reaching desperately for her. His face was a mask of fear and pain, but within his eyes she detected a glimmer of something else: hope. "Jessica!" His voice was stronger this time, cutting through the madness with an urgency that ignited her resolve. "Fight!" she shouted back, her steady voice rising above the cacophony. "We can beat this! Together!" As she spoke, the glow from the symbols flared brighter, as if rumbling to life in response to their bond, a flicker of defiance against the looming dark. Fueled by fierce determination, she pushed past the creeping dread wrapping around her heart. The shadows hissed in rage, their swirling darkness pressing in on her, curling like smoke against her skin. She could feel the tendrils tightening, flaying against her legs, yet a fire kindled in her soul. The symbolism beneath her hands pulsed back, fighting the encroaching dark, pouring crimson energy into the air around her. "Please," she whispered, "show me the way." And at that moment, a spark ignited within the crack beneath her, an ancient word, a promise woven into the fabric of her being. The symbols rumbled, vibrating with her plea, suddenly shifting to reveal an intricate pattern that symbolized unity, light and dark intertwined. Jessica felt it wash over her, a tide of understanding. "Lucas!" she shouted, her voice magnified by the furious glow surrounding her. "Join me! We can use the shadows against them." Lucas, still shackled by the dark, hesitated. But then she saw a flicker in his expression, as if he had grasped the hidden truths she had uncovered. With newfound determination, he reached for her, his hands straining against the oppressive grip of the shadows. "Together!" he shouted back, and at his cry, she felt the ground swell. They began to pull against the inevitability of the darkness, weaving their energy between each other like light threading through darkness, fighting, battling for breath and moments of clarity amid the chaos. The shadows distorted and writhed, the ghastly faces swirling in confusion. But just as their combined strength began to push back against the shadows, a sudden chilling laughter echoed from the pit below, reverberating in their bones, deep, resonant, and mocking. It was the voice of something more ancient and powerful than the shadows themselves. "Your bond cannot save you. This is only the beginning." Jessica's breath caught in her throat. Unseen pressure crushed down upon her, threatening to sever their connection, but behind her eyes, flickers of the symbols flashed like lightning in a tempest. Would they break free from this nightmarish hold, or would the darkness prevail, putting an end to their fight? Tendrils clawed at her from all sides. Panic surged like fire through her veins as she sought to anchor herself, fearing the answer was slipping from her grasp. What else lay hidden in the suffocating void? Jessica's breath came in frantic gasps as the shadows narrowed around her, pressing against her mind like a vice. "Lucas!" she called, but the connection felt so fragile. The flickering symbols pulsed beneath her feet, begging for their energy to intertwine, to combat the encroaching darkness. "We have to do it together," she urged, eyes fixed on the distant silhouette of her brother, still ensnared by the shadows. Those tendrils twisted and wrapped around him like serpents, blue-black skin shining with malice. "I'm trying," Lucas shouted back, straining against their grip. "But it's too strong." "No! We're stronger together." The realization surged through her, igniting the embers of courage buried deep within her. They had to draw strength from one another. She reached out, pulling every ounce of her resolve into the ethereal glow that pulsed around the symbols. The shadows hesitated, their cold tendrils wavering. "Let us use our fear," Jessica shouted, pushing the words into the very fabric of the air. "Let it fuel us." A sudden wind whipped through the clearing, crackling with energy, responding to her plea. The embers of hope flared inside her chest, burning brighter than ever. Jessica could see it now. The shadows flickered, shifting nervously in reaction to her conviction. "Lucas!" she urged, her heartbeat syncing with the rhythm of the symbols. "Focus on me. See the light. Embrace it." With a determined shout, she began to chant the ancient words buzzing through her mind, feeling the energy surge around her as she linked her thoughts to Lucas, weaving them together like the threads of an unbreakable rope. "Jessica!" he called from the depths of the darkness. But in her heart she felt a tether connecting them, a bond too fierce to sever. With every syllable they spoke, a defiance struck through the shadows, illuminating the darkness more and more. The pulsing glow intensified, pushing the shadows back as they coiled and hissed, revealing the raw terror etched across their phantom faces. Together, they cried in unison, their voices merging into a powerful crescendo, reverberating through the very ground beneath them, echoing with ancient magic rooted in the earth as history. A blinding flash erupted from the glowing symbols, swallowing the dark tendrils and illuminating the clearing in bright, warm light. The shadows shrieked, recoiling, and in that moment, Jessica felt the connection between her and Lucas solidify into an unbreakable force. "Fight!" she screamed again, and this time the warmth spread from her fingertips into every crevice of her being. They focused a surge of hope into the light, willing it into a concentrated beam pushing against the shadows. One by one, the dark figures faltered, their angry screams melding into a haunting chorus as they withered under the radiant power. The forest itself seemed to exhale a deep, resonant sigh that echoed through the trees, resonating with the very heartbeat of the earth. "Now! We can finish this!" Lucas cried, tears of determination streaming down his face, caught in the same raw energy that surrounded them. They pushed outward, the glow bouncing through the trees like sound waves, erasing the darkness inch by inch. But in the throes of their triumph, a deep, guttural laughter rang out from deeper in the woods. The ancient voice echoed mockingly, reminding them that shadows could never be fully destroyed. "You think you've won?" it sneered, fissures opening in the ground beneath them. "This is only a taste of the horror you have woken." "Jessica!" Lucas shouted, the shadows surging again, aiming to reclaim their hold. "No! We've come too far." She stepped closer to him, eyes fierce with resolve, and together they released another surge of energy. The light burst outwards even brighter, illuminating every corner of the woods, devouring the shadows whole. The waves of light washed over the darkness, obliterating the lingering menace as if peeling back the very fabric of night. And then, with a final, shattering crescendo, the darkness surrendered, dissolving into tendrils of smoke that spiraled into nothingness. Silence hung in the air, deep and haunting, before it cracked with the brilliant sounds of the forest waking up. Birds chirped, a distant rustle echoed through the trees, and the moon shone down like a benevolent sentinel. Jessica and Lucas released their breath, bodies trembling from exhaustion but hearts filled with relief. They stood amidst the remnants of a forest that had tried to claim them. A haunting memory lingered in the air, yet for now it hadn't succeeded. "We did it," Jessica whispered, her voice trembling as she looked at Lucas, his wide eyes sparkling with both fear and relief. Hand in hand, warmth radiated between them, binding them against the aftermath of what they had faced. He began, but Jessica squeezed his hand tighter. "Let us go home," she said softly. "We've seen enough darkness for one summer." With lingering caution, they turned towards the trail, feeling the breeze brush against their skin, carrying away the last remnants of their fear as the forests returned to a semblance of normalcy. They walked away, leaving behind the malevolence that sought to ensnare them, and stepped into the light where safety awaited. As they made their way back to the campsite, the laughter of their family echoed in the distance. The warmth of that shared laughter pressed against the edges of their terror. They had faced the abyss, and come back together, two souls forged in the darkness, now set free to chase the light. And if you enjoyed this wild ride, you need to subscribe now. Don't miss any of our exclusive stories. You don't want to be left in the dark. And smash that like button now to help the algorithm find more amazing fans like you. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about what happens next. Did you love the twist? I want to hear from you. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. It's time to spread the light.